Welcome to this explainer. I want you to imagine, just for a second, that your body is a highly sophisticated vessel, kind of like a human avatar, and your brain is the high-powered engine driving the entire machine. Now, just like any piece of high-performance hardware, your brain doesn't run on magic. It runs on physical voltage. Today, we're exploring some absolutely fascinating neurological research from Eternity Leonard. We're going to look at the exact mechanism of how the fuel you put into your body, specifically your blood sugar, directly dictates the electrical frequencies of your mind. We're talking about how the food you eat literally tunes the radio dial of your consciousness.
To really wrap our heads around the scale of this operation, consider this surprising biological reality. 20%. Your brain accounts for only about 2% of your total body weight. It's just a tiny fraction of your physical mass. Yet it's an absolute energy hog, consuming a massive 20% of your body's total glucose energy. It demands a constant, enormous supply of fuel just to keep the lights on and the signals firing.
Okay, let's dive into this and look at the glucose to voltage blueprint. Mitochondria are these microscopic cellular energy factories inside your neurons. You see, your brainwaves aren't just abstract thoughts. They're generated by billions of neurons sending physical electrical messages to one another. To fire these impulses, the mitochondria have to convert glucose from your bloodstream into ATP, which is usable cellular fuel. Without that conversion, there's no electricity. And without electricity, there's no brainwave. It is a direct, physical exchange from the sugar in your blood to the literal spark in your mind. So, what exactly happens when we push this system to the absolute extremes? Well, when you have high or spiking blood sugar, you aren't just giving your brain extra energy. Actually, you're creating a chaotic oversupply of raw fuel. You're forcing your neurons to fire at an unnaturally rapid, totally erratic pace. On the flip side, when your blood sugar crashes, you are literally starving those mitochondria. The brain panics, enters an emergency energy conservation mode, and your physical voltage just plunges. These two extremes act like a violent mechanical gear shifter. If your glucose is swinging wildly, your brain's radio dial is being jerked violently between frantic static and total crushing exhaustion. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the 7 brainwave states spectrum. You can see exactly how the physical voltage of your glucose tunes into these specific frequencies. High voltage pushes you into beta, gamma, and lambda. Those are the zones of panic and static. The mid zone, where alpha and theta live, is that perfectly balanced flow state. And the low zone, delta and epsilon, is where you hit absolute lethargy and the void. It's a literal map of your consciousness, and it's driven entirely by the fuel you're putting into the system. Let's break these zones down, starting right at the top.
Section 1. The high frequency zone. Spikes, mania, and static.
Let's see what happens to the electrical grid when things get running way too fast. When you consume refined sugars, high glycemic carbs, or even when you get hit with a massive surge of stress-induced glucose, you get an instant jump to high beta static. We're talking 20 to 30 hertz. Your neurons are firing incredibly fast. This is the exact frequency of panic. It's hypervigilance, it's that looping overthought where you just cannot calm down. Outwardly, it often manifests as an aggressive, highly defensive ego. I want you to really grasp this. When you feel this specific type of anxious, manic energy, it isn't just an emotion you need to think your way out of. It's actually your biological antenna receiving the wrong voltage from a massive glucose spike. You just have way too much raw electrical voltage with absolutely no grounding filter.
And if that spike is severe enough, the dial twists even further into gamma and lambda waves, pushing 30 to over 200 hertz. For some, especially folks with a history of neurochemical trauma, like past use of strong stimulants or substances like 25I, a rapid blood sugar spike acts as an explosive electrical trigger. It violently pushes the brain past the state of natural gamma genius and slides it right into the hyper-frequent static of lambda, which creates intense psychosis loops. The brain is quite literally short-circuiting from an uncontrolled surge of energetic fuel. It's hardware failure due to a power surge. But, what goes up must eventually come down.
Section 2, the low frequency zone, the crash and the void. When that massive sugar spike inevitably crashes, insulin floods your system and drags all that glucose right out of your bloodstream. Suddenly, the brain is completely starved of fuel. The frequencies drop like a rock down to delta at 0.5 to 4 hertz and epsilon at less than half a hertz. Because the brain is deprived of glucose, it literally pulls the emergency brake to protect itself from cellular death. You experience this heavy, sluggish drop into forced delta. That's that intense brain fog and lethargy we all know. Or even worse, a sudden plunge into the sub-base void of epsilon, which is characterized by detached dissociation and numbness.
Your consciousness is effectively forced out of the waking world. You need to understand that in this moment, you aren't actually tired, and you definitely aren't entering some enlightened meditative state. Your 3D interface has simply run out of electricity to power the human avatar.
Section 3. The mid-frequency zone, the flow state sweet spot.
So we definitely don't want the manic highs, and we certainly don't want the void of the crash. We want to tune the dial right to the center. This is where the magic happens. Alpha waves between 8 and 12 hertz, and theta waves between 4 and 8 hertz. To access your highest creative alignment, your brain requires a perfectly steady, unfluctuating stream of clean energy. We're talking power from clean proteins and healthy ancestral fats. Think field-raised beef and complex, slow-burning nutrients. When your blood sugar is completely stabilized, the brain just stops worrying about survival. Your vagus nerve signals absolute safety to the rest of the body. This incredibly stable voltage allows your brainwaves to settle beautifully into the calm, present baseline of alpha for creative flow and right down into the intuitive realm of theta for subconscious wisdom. This steady, clean power is the only environment where true, unbothered manifestation and self-trust can actually thrive.
Which leads us to a really important question, right? Why do we reach for dependencies? When our biological system is dysregulated, bouncing back and forth between the static of beta and the void of delta, why do we constantly reach for outside substances to fix it? And this brilliantly illustrates the trap of trying to artificially tune the radio dial. This blood sugar roller coaster explains exactly why certain dependencies become incredibly magnetic when your physical fuel is unstable. Take nicotine, for example. It causes an artificial release of glycogen from your liver. This temporarily spikes your blood sugar, giving your burnt-out dopamine receptors a quick, fake burst of high beta focus. You aren't actually focused, you've just artificially spiked the grid. Then consider marijuana, or THC. It drastically alters glucose metabolism in the brain, causing rapid drops in blood sugar, which is exactly why you get the munchies. This crash forces the brain straight down into the Epsilon void. It might mimic relaxation at first, but it is a total trap. It easily backfires into a paranoid Lambda flashback because the brain suddenly panics from the terrifying lack of stable energy. You're violently twisting the dial instead of fixing the power source.
Section 4. Reclaiming your flow state, anchoring the biological dial.
So, the crucial point is, how do we actually fix the hardware? How do we stop jerking the dial and finally step into lasting alignment? Well, you have direct control over this. To create a true healing loop for your brain's electrical grid, you just have to follow 3 biological steps. Step 1. Feed the machine clean code. You've got to eliminate the synthetic sugars and prioritize nutrient-dense, slow-releasing real proteins. This is what stabilizes your baseline voltage right from the ground up. Step 2. Anchor the high beta spikes. When you inevitably feel a stress-induced rush pushing you into anxious beta waves, use the 7 senses framework. For instance, inhale a deep grounding botanical oil like cedarwood or frankincense. This physical, biological input immediately tells your amygdala to downregulate the nervous system, anchoring the spike before it ever turns into static. And step 3, protect your repose. Honor your body's natural rhythms. By keeping your fuel perfectly stable, you allow your brain to slide gracefully from productive beta into creative alpha and down into restorative delta sleep entirely on your terms without ever short-circuiting the hardware. I want to leave you with this incredibly powerful final thought from the research. You cannot establish an unshakable golden heart torus field if your physical biology is constantly panicking from a glucose crash. You absolutely cannot reach your highest mental, creative, or spiritual potential if your human avatar is starving for stable power. The hardware has to be tuned first. So, I ask you, what fuel are you going to choose to power your engine today? Thank you so much for exploring this with me. Keep learning, keep tuning that dial, and I'll catch you in the next one.